Welcome back to our Sharing Best Practice session. We've actually got three sets of people joining us. We've got Darren Knight, Director of People and Change at Cheltenham Borough Council. We've got Mark Tyson and Councillor Saima Ashraf from London Borough Barking and Dagenham. And finally, we've got Chloe Hughes from Portsmouth City Council. So hopefully you'll have all had a chance to see the videos. And actually these are representative examples of best practice from across the country. 2 Certificates of Excellence winner, our Council of the Year for 2020. This is a chance for us to explore a little bit more through Q&A the initiatives that have been underway in these authorities. So we're going to start with some questions individually to each of the recipients. And from there, we're going to explore the conversation a little bit further, hopefully collectively, see how we get on with the technology on the day. So first of all, in terms of the Cheltenham project, Darren, you've obviously been sort of pre-pandemic thinking about this in terms of communication. So why LinkedIn as the medium for you? What was the choice behind that in terms of your communication strategy?
Well, our focus has been to, over the last few months, we're looking to build a cyber park and cyber innovation centre in Cheltenham, which is going to be one of the biggest economic projects in the region. And for us, we needed a platform to raise the profile of that project as an inward investment opportunity for Cheltenham, and also then to engage with businesses within Cheltenham about how they could be involved potentially in the local supply chain. So that was the main driver for how we could use LinkedIn. And that then made us then to think about other benefits we get from the platform. So, for example, we wanted to be able to engage more with Cheltenham businesses in terms of their plans for the borough, in terms of job creation and inward investment. And also we wanted to use the platform to help us recruit the best talent to come work for the council, because our ambition was growing. We were planning to do more complicated and challenging projects. And so we needed to bring in different skills as well. So the platform was there to help us raise the profile of these projects, help us attract the best talent to the organisation, and also enable us to find different ways of engaging with Cheltenham businesses in the borough.
And also, you're starting out. You'd identified LinkedIn as the right platform for you. Were you able to find any other information elsewhere about other authorities and what they were doing and how that had gone on, and learn from that and build upon it?
We are quite lucky in Cheltenham because we actually have one of the country's best LinkedIn trainers based in Cheltenham, Luann Wise, so who I follow on LinkedIn. And I've benefited from her training in the past. So with that knowledge, we felt actually it was definitely the platform for us. LinkedIn is focused on business to business. So for us, it had that right approach. And also the network has grown massively over the last few years as well, especially within local government and the wider public sector.
Yeah. I'd like to bring in Chloe, because your project, Chloe, obviously is broader than just the digital piece, but actually what you found is a great way to take some of that content and make real use from that in these currently difficult times. So in terms of allowing people to watch the content interactively, how have people reacted to that so far? Have people expressed an interest in becoming curators of some of the information that you've got?
Well, not curators, because of where the live stream was going. So we had lots of care homes who were taking part, NHS wards. We had people in residential settings. We had people who had previously been regular attendees at memory cafe groups, etc. So I think for them, us using our moving image collection in this way and using technology such as Teams to kind of get it out allowed us to find a new way to be able to engage with audiences in a way in which we would never have considered ahead of the pandemic. And I think for us, it was a very, very steep learning curve. As March hit, we were all very suddenly moving to Zoom and Teams as the very new way of doing things. And I think certainly for us within Plymouth City Council, we had a lot of kind of steep learning to do. And it was very much thanks to the colleagues across the council that we learned how to use the technology to enable us to get this amazing content that we have within our collections out and used by a wider audience.
Great. And so you've actually been actively sharing best practice within the council, and that's enabled you to do that. Did you see anything similar elsewhere? Do you have other lessons learned from other authorities that you were able to build upon?
No. So what was really interesting for us was thinking as a local authority-led museum how we would best do this. And we were really aware that there was this very sudden drive, you remember kind of back in March and April, where suddenly there was loads of content online, encouraging you to make the best use of lockdown, learn a language, and practice that musical instrument that was dusty and left in the corner. But it was very much less around how you might engage with people who were very socially isolated and lonely, and how you might use technology in this way. So for us, that felt a really important step to look at actually who in the pandemic was not being reached, and how might we use our digital technology to enable us to do that, and how by working together within the various different departments in the council could we do that most effectively.
Excellent, thank you.
Could I ask Mark and Simon how IT has featured and what Barking and Dagenham are doing? Because it seems to me that in both these initiatives it's been about reaching out to partners and stakeholders, and that could be the case for residents as well. So how have Barking and Dagenham made use of technology to support the initiative that they've been rolling out?
I suppose ours is, I'll jump in if
Yep.
with
Go ahead, Mark.
ours is a whole scale transformation of the council, and part of what we've been doing over these 4 or 5 years is building the capacities that the council needs in order to be able to meet the challenges. Now, one of those capacities is IT. We have brought our IT service back in-house from our strategic joint venture partner, but we started the transformation, and we started the new kind of rollout of a Teams and 365 and all that sort of stuff before we did that kind of transfer back in. But it also goes beyond that. So we've got things like we have a system called BD OneView, which is a kind of data kind of matching system built around Centura product. And again, that helps our community solutions service to kind of give that more rounded service to people as they come through the door, to be able to match that the person with the housing benefit inquiry has actually got a whole series of other things happening in their life and may need a wider service.
So a much more holistic approach in terms of your view of the individual resident, very human-centred, if you like. Yeah. Sam, have you got anything from your perspective, from a member perspective, that how you've seen the use of digital in Barking and Dagenham help you in engaging with the community and actually bringing that relationship closer between the council and the community?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that the fact that we were quite quick in the rapid response to the lockdown. So if it wasn't for the change of the services, we would have struggled. So I'm glad that we as a council we were quite quick in making those changes. But the challenges are greater than what we think, I have to say, because it's coming from the council's perspective is one thing, but putting yourself on the other side, I think it's another kind of like fish to fry. We've seen throughout the lockdown, and we're still seeing that from a council perspective we can do things, or pass a message, but when it's coming from the community, not everyone has computers or laptops available. Then there was like problems with broadbands or things like this. So it's about like finding ways of doing the best we can as a council.
Brilliant, thank you. John? Anyone?
Yeah, just to say, so in terms of LinkedIn, when you rolled it out and it started to gather momentum within the council, how did the staff receive it? And did you need to do any training or interact with them to make it work?
Well, first of all, we invested in training our communications team. So we brought some external trainers in to give them additional skills in terms of how to use LinkedIn and also create content in different ways. As we began to use the platform, we often will tag officers in who lead on certain areas of work. And that tagging in notifies them they've got a mention on LinkedIn, and that generates the likes and shares and the engagement with the content. And so by doing that, that began to generate interest in the platform and in the content. And also, we just don't feature just one team. We feature work across the whole council. So it tells the story of all the work we're doing across different parts of the organisation. And that momentum and that continuation of that approach then generated more interest from our staff, and then more staff then began to take an interest in the platform, and then also those that weren't using it then started to use it. So we do provide training if they need it. We do encourage people to use LinkedIn because it's a rich source of learning and innovation, and a great way to network.
And would you say now that's your main way of interacting with local businesses?
At the moment, it's a key way because of obviously the situation we're in. What we found is that by using LinkedIn on a regular basis, talking about the work we're doing as a council, we've been asked to attend more business forums virtually, and before the lockdown, face-to-face, and they've been really good ways of doing that engagement. And then during the lockdown, it's proved really useful in terms of getting the message across about the rapid way we pay business grants, that type of thing. And also, we've then been approached continuously to take part in virtual conferences nationally or at local level. So in terms of our objectives of using LinkedIn, it's continued to serve us well.
And would that be a means of generating income?
We've currently doing some work with our building control team. So we're training them how to use LinkedIn to identify leads for the building control service. So they've recently had a training course on LinkedIn, and they're currently in the process of putting that learning into use. And hopefully what we're going to see from that investment is they should hopefully get some leads for our building control service. Because obviously a lot of construction companies, architects use that platform. So therefore our building control service should also be using that platform to engage with those prospective customers.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. I'd like to bring in Simon and Mark again. I mean, Darren's talked about training and developing staff and supporting them there. I mean, you've undergone a fantastic transformation. It's a wholesale transformation of the council inside and out. And that started with consultation with the community, of course. So are there things that you learned from the community that you hadn't heard before, or that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't started with that engagement process? That's question number one for you, Simon, if I may. And then Mark, in terms of the practical, you've talked about the data and joining that and getting a bit of knowledge of each individual. In practical terms, at the coalface, actually, when you're then supporting, what does that look like? So one thing for you, Simon, is the consultation, and what did you learn? And then perhaps after that, Mark, what does that turn out like when you're then engaging in the practical response?
So I'll start. So thank you for the question. I have to say that, since 2006, I have been at the doorstep, and that's even before I was an elected member. We had 12 BNP councillors here, and what we wanted is to get rid of them. So being at the doorstep, doing the consultation and the engagement is something that I strongly believe in, and we never stopped. If I have, to really make myself, we never stopped then. Obviously now we're doing other means to get to our resident due to COVID. But the more you do the engagement, the better you have, the better participation you have, the better, effective decisions you have, and the better you can design your services. So, I don't want to sound arrogant if I say that, oh yeah, there's nothing that I haven't heard, but nothing surprising me. There is a long history in what we do in consulting and listening to our resident. So as we move progressively, into years and into the progress of Barking and Dagenham, just today we launched the film studios. So we've got Hackman Capitals and MBS groups that, will deliver our film studios. A large, a great opportunity for our resident, for our youth as well. And that's from listening to our resident, listening to what they wanted to see, the changes they wanted to see, the things that they liked here and they would love to see. So it's definitely, something that will always stay embedded in what we do.
Brilliant, that's great. So it sounds like the community themselves are commissioning content, and you're their platform, which is brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Mark, you talked about the fact that you were looking at the information coming from traditional services in a different way now. Then in terms of your response to that, what does that look like? Can you give us some examples of how you're doing things differently as a result of that?
So, in terms of, the main front door to all the council services is a service that we call Community Solutions. And so that takes, it was 15 services originally that were kind of merged into this new entity from the MASH and early help in children services, the adult intake team, plus welfare, housing, domestic abuse frontline services, and some others. And they were restructured around a model of kind of progressively deepening intervention. So it starts with universal services, so the library service is part of that children's centres, and then moves on to targeted and then specialist support. So people can sort of, in a sense, flow through those services, and it's sort of agnostic to what their particular presenting issues are, but with the right specialisms in place when they're needed to be provided. I mean, that's the sort of very broad kind of overview of that service. I don't know if there's more detail you want on that.
No, that's great. That gives a really good flavour about the difference in the way that you kind of have responded now to kind of more traditional response.
And actually, I would just add, and then around that, you've got the commissioning response. And so because we've built a kind of commissioning architecture around it, it means that things like the provision of housing, that there's good support for the community solutions service in making sure there's the right provision out there in the market from the various vehicles that we've got for delivering housing. For example, so that's one particular practical where the commissioning bit supports the frontline delivery quite seamlessly.
Brilliant. John?
A question to Chloe, really, about, and it's coming online, have you considered a wider rollout of this project, for example, for schools and education? And allied to that, do you see it as a method of generating income as a service, or is it really about information transfer?
Yes, so I don't know whether you can see me on your screen. I may have gone a bit black, but hopefully you can hear me. Just to pick up on that, I think absolutely the really interesting thing for us was how quickly this forced the evolution of our thinking in this digital space. But there are so many lessons for us in terms of thinking about our schools programme particularly, and we've got some virtual schools sessions that we're trialling from this spring now as a direct result of the learning of the work that we did on the box. So that's been really interesting for us to take that learning and think about how we might widen it further, but also in terms of thinking about how could we use the impact of the pandemic and lockdown to really think about our digital offer, but what might this be over the longer term? So although we very quickly pivoted and created this new programme, we've also been thinking really carefully about what this might look like for us in the future, and how do we continue to offer these series of sessions. One of the things that we're looking at the moment is about the commercial viability of that in the future. I think from my point of view at the moment, and given where our communities are in Plymouth and people's experience of the pandemic, it's having such a massive impact on people's social isolation and their loneliness, particularly to those groups who at the best of times may be experiencing greater loneliness than others within the population, that at the moment it isn't the right time for us to look at how we might make that a more commercial venture. But absolutely in the future, I think there's an opportunity for us to think really carefully about how we use that asset going forward, because this is a start of a brand new digital reminiscence service, and there's some great opportunities for us to look at how we roll that out more widely across the region too.
That's great. Thanks, Chloe. I'd like to sort of come back to the same sort of point, I guess, with Mark and with iESE. So, you've seen the beginning of the pandemic coming in, and you've got to make a response. You've obviously had a lot of work leading up to what's been quite a systematic change in the way that the council works. What were the things about that helped you, if they did, have greater resilience to the pandemic? And the other would be, and how does that? Are there lessons within that you would give to other people who want to embark on the same sort of journey as you've taken?
Don't know, Jim. Shall I start?
Yeah.
Let's start and then.
So I think, one of the really practical things, and we talked about IT earlier, so the kit just worked. People were able to head off home, away from the organisation, and still deliver it was almost seamless the way in which people were able to still kind of get the service out the door, despite this kind of major kind of disruption to the standard working pattern. So that's one part of it. The other part was having created really good insight and data mining on services, things like before the government sort of thought and got onto the kind of shielding and so on, we were already mapping those areas of the borough where we knew there was a high concentration of people with certain levels of vulnerability on different indicators, and doing kind of leaflet drops into those streets where we knew there's concentrations of the people that might need our BD CAN, we called it, Citizens Alliance Network, but a support system. So we'd kind of got on the front, and actually we then, having set up a specialist service to support shielders, we realised when we looked back that half the shielders had gone through the general community service we'd set up anyway, because we'd got that targeting out so quickly. So those are just two examples, I think, about how we were resilient to be able to respond.
Yeah.
Councillor Ashworth, we'll talk about the community relationships and the third sector.
Yeah, so we've been working quite hard, in the past 5 years, and establishing, a greater relationship, not only with the social sector, but also our faith groups, different public groups, such as any youth club or those kind of small groups that you would see in the borough. 5 years of intensive work and reinforcing those relationships. And when we were hit by COVID, I think it was just in a matter of 4 days that we had set up BD CAN, and that helped us to establish around 5 community hubs where we were able to distribute food for those that were shielded, packages for those families in need, where the faith groups were helping their different groups were those hubs, were different groups. Some were part of faith groups, some were clubs or youth groups. And delivering those services. It has, we had a number on the council that people could call and, ask for the help that they needed. Through those services, through that number, we recorded over 2,000 people that were helped via BD CAN. But we are very well aware that each hub had already had their support group to their neighbours or the groups that they cater for, and we are aware that there is approximately over around 30,000 people that have been helped throughout, and that's due to that relationship that the community had, but also that setup that we had in place. Mark just touched on our data insight team, and I think we've got such a team that which is the data explorer and the data insight team that really helped us in the very beginning when COVID wasn't announced and the lockdown was due to be announced. We knew exactly where we've got concentration of elderly people, or how many elderly people do we have, how many of them are actually lonely, how many of them have a specific medical need, and how we could help them. So I think it's a lot of preparation, but also community relationship that needs to be in place. Hopefully that answers.
Yes, no, it does. What it gives is a really great picture about how the years of effort you've put in actually paid off in that time of adversity. So that's it's phenomenal. John.
I think also the commissioning culture around the councils. So this idea that people aren't in departments, they're in kind of more service blocks that kind of work across departments. So that when it came to pulling together to get that support system in place, it sort of felt the relationships worked better. And so it sort of felt easier. So not only the relationships out to the third sector, but within the organisation. So all of that dialogue around what do we want to be as a council and the restructure, in a sense, had just left this better foundation of relationships between services and teams to pull together. It
strikes me you already had the mission, and actually that was then able to be applied in this particular context. So that's fantastic. Yeah. John, over to you.
I've got a question for Darren, really. Given the investment in LinkedIn and the success you've had, where next? How are you going to convert that into more success for the authority?
I think our focus at the moment is looking how we can use LinkedIn to support our income generating services. So I mentioned, for example, builder control. So there's an opportunity for them to engage with the business community in terms of architects, construction companies and so on. And we've got other income generating services, pest control, for example. We don't actually feature that on our LinkedIn platform about that service. So I think our focus will be looking at those services where we can promote, we can sell or raise awareness of those services that we offer that the public may not be aware that we do provide. Because ultimately, councils are a trusted source of information and services. And so I think for us, it will be along the lines, we're looking at those opportunities where we could potentially gain more customers for those range of services that we currently charge for.
Well, because it's moving you more digital, are there spin-offs from this, not using LinkedIn, but using digital to achieve other things?
I mean, for us, it's improved our capability in the organisation. So a lot of the learning we've taken from LinkedIn in terms of content creation, how we get more organic reach from the content that we publish, has helped us then improve our Facebook approach and also helped us with our Twitter approach. So we've seen some of that skill transfer help us in other areas in terms of that engagement, in terms of platforms. And also it's given the organisation more confidence then generally when it comes to digital communications, and also being a bit more edgy, a bit more bold with the content that we're publishing and creating.
And is it just officers or officers and members?
We've got quite a big group of members who use social media, and we will provide them with training guidance when they need to use it. But no, we've got quite a lot of members now. We use Twitter, Facebook, and a growing number of members now using LinkedIn, which is really, really positive to see.
Thank you.
I think that there's, in all of this, we've got different communities and there's consultation going on. To what extent did the consultation and building the relationships start first and the technology follow, or the other way round? I mean, there's a danger in being technology-led rather than problem-led. So how did that sort of start out for you?
I think the start for us was all about purpose.
Yeah.
Going back to the purpose of the conference today, we were very, very clear we wanted to improve how we engage with businesses at a local level.
Yeah.
We also wanted to engage with businesses at a more national level because of the inward investment opportunities in Cheltenham. And so we were very clear about the problems we were trying to solve first.
Yeah.
And then we agreed the approach in terms of what content should we push out, what messages. Then we looked to see what impact that had in terms of engagement. And then we refined our approach as we trialled and tested different types of content messages.
Yep.
And that was the approach we took, really. And it goes back to the presentation, talking about conversion rate.
Yep.
What type of content gets you the conversion, the likes,
Yep.
the shares, the followers, and which ones doesn't achieve that.
Yep.
And then we've refined our approach over the last 2 years. And I think on average now we grow by about 121 followers a month.
And that's phenomenal. I mean, the impact that you've had, and yet when you're looking through the video, you know, the kind of discussion is actually how you can do something with very little resource. I mean, you could be forgiven that you'd spent millions on this. Can you give a feel for kind of what the sort of costs were for you in developing the platform as you have?
We've not quantified the cost. We've just made it part of the business as usual for the communications team. So the communication team hasn't grown.
Yeah.
We've just made sure we put the money into training,
yeah.
which is really, really important to do. But in terms of everything else, it's all been done with the existing capacity we had 2 years ago. What we've done, though, is invest in increasing our capability to become more efficient at developing content. And I think on the presentation, one of the tools that, if you don't use it, is Canva.
Yeah.
Really great tool to create really engaging content at no little cost.
And that's a fantastic, and the way that you've gathered those tools together and made something from them is brilliant. And the fact that your investment is just in the capacity of the people, again, it's a great local government story, that one is invested in the capacity of the team. I'd like to bring Chloe in if I can, and ask you a similar sort of question. You know, when you started out, what was your approach? Was it, you know, in terms of engaging with the team and the staff, with the community? Did you look at technology solutions and put them in front of people so they knew what was possible? What was the way that you opened up the solution to the problem?
Yeah, I mean, just really interesting hearing you talk about the purpose and the mission. And for us, it was always that we knew people, we knew that COVID had got into care homes across the city, and we knew that people in the city were having a really torrid time of it. So our first response was, how can we support people in this way at this time? And the technology seemed the obvious way. But absolutely, we had to learn very fast, actually, as a team, about how you present and how you share this information through this new form of technology. And interestingly for us, we also had to work really closely with care home staff who often struggled in terms of how you might use that technology and understanding what they had to do. So for us, it wasn't just as simple as going out and learning those skills. We also had to make sure that the people on the other end were able to use those technologies and able to engage with us. So there was quite a period of consultation that came in as a result of that, and a lot of upskilling of the team, but also the wider community and people who were engaging with us. I think for us, it's provided something really interesting in terms of consultation in the future. It's given us a new inroad, particularly to those communities who, you know, we often brand it as kind of hard to reach. They really are very difficult to reach, but the technology has proven that actually we can start those conversations off, and increasingly we want to move towards this greater co-production model whereby those communities are dictating what that content might be that they want to see, and we're also working with them to talk about other issues that are pertinent to life within the city as well.
Thanks. And that's a very similar point to Mark and Saima you made in terms of the film production studio that you talked about, and getting other groups coming in. I wonder whether you've obviously done a lot over the years in terms of consultation. Have you got any measures of the participation and growth in things like the Citizens Alliance Network, or any other measure of success for the participation of community in what you're doing?
You go on first, Mark.
Mark.
I'll chuck in what's in my head. So we've got so there's a couple of different platforms that we've created around participation. So one is with a partner to Participatory City, Everyone Every Day, and that's by the end of year 2 had reached something like 28,000 hours of practical participation. There were 6,000 people had engaged, but I think more than the data for that, it was the qualitative insight into how it had changed people's lives, how it had helped people sort of activate themselves as citizens able to participate in the community around them. Yep. There's that. The Citizens Alliance Network is the deliberative democracy space. People can get on, start conversations about things, may or may not involve the council. Yep. But that's a bit more fledgling, and we were taking that a bit slower, and we're about to now ramp up, trying to just expand the numbers involved in that.
Brilliant.
But again, I think it's keeping an eye on the qualitative as much as the numbers, I think.
Yep. Simon, have you got anything to add to that, or does that cover the...
Yeah, I mean, Citizen Alliance Network is one thing, and well, I don't want to touch too much about Everyone Every Day, but we also had a bit like something which is the Money Hub. That also helped a lot our residents on their financial crisis, especially now. And it's something that was, already out there. So for us, that give really, an acute support to our resident. And that helped, a lot of people to prevent them to be homeless, but also financially in better positions.
Great, that's brilliant. Thank you. John?
A question about boundaries for all of you, really. Have your neighbours taken an interest in what you're doing and sought to consider to do it themselves? So has there been interaction with your geographic neighbours, and have they looked at what you've done and said, hey, we would like to do that too?
Maybe we can start with Saima on that one.
Yeah, so absolutely, we've got a very good relationship with our neighbours, and we work very closely with them. Any kind of and that part of East London is part of the same political background, so we do support and help each other. We learn from best practice, and absolutely, we work very closely. And I am aware there are a few services, and on top of my head, I don't remember which ones that we're sharing. We're actually delivering to other boroughs.
Right.
Mark, maybe you could add on this.
I mean, the one that comes to mind, we share a civil contingency service, for example, with Waltham Forest Redbridge.
Right.
So we kind of and the other bit is particularly around health partnerships. Collaboration across North East London is also really strong. So and obviously through the COVID world, a lot of that has been kind of health partnership activity. So it's just again been fortuitously it's been able to harness kind of existing relationships that have really helped us deliver.
Yeah. Darren?
And from a Cheltenham perspective, we provided a training course for the Southwest Audit Partnership for their chief executive on LinkedIn, and I'm really pleased to see they're doing really well in terms of how they use the platform. We've also provided LinkedIn shared our expertise with one of our tackle companies. That's owned by 3 other district councils, so we've done that, and also with our arm's length company and the Cheltenham Trust, who run the borough's leisure and culture buildings. And we're quite happy to provide any advice and help to anybody else in the sector that we can. And the other thing we do is we also publish case studies on LinkedIn of any work there we've had a particular success.
Brilliant.
So, because we're committed to sharing best practice in the sector. So anything that we've done around nighttime economy, for example, there's been a number of business case studies we've published over the last sort of 12 months.
Fantastic. Chloe, so have you done any sharing with neighbours or maybe perhaps within colleagues in the sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work very closely with our neighbours. Being in the southwest, we always have to. One of the interesting things that has happened as a result of this is thinking about archives more regionally. So we've been doing a lot of sharing with other regional archives about the work that we're doing, and we increasingly want to do that. For us, this is an opportunity to kind of snowball and further develop a model that seems to be increasingly sustainable and responsive in the very strange times that we're in at the moment, but also a model that can be developed further within the future. So we're really keen to kind of get that out, both within the archives and the museum and gallery sector too.
Yeah. Does that actually, I hadn't thought of that, does that create opportunities where you hold perhaps rare content that's the same as someone else, that you've got opportunities to reduce the effort of holding content?
So usually our content is different. Sometimes it can double up. But what this usually offers is opportunities for you to find thematic content across regions. So, for example, if there were a big annual celebration or event that everyone wanted to respond to, you could look at how you might do this in a very networked way across the country. So there are a number of really interesting ways in which we can take this as a model moving forward.
Brilliant. Thank you. John.
Just, Darren, you've mentioned a critical partner. One of the biggest LinkedIn trainers was based in the borough. So I'm going to ask you a question about that, which is critical partners, critical friends. What are the big players that have influenced the way you've taken the initiative forward? You mentioned a company that was based in the locality.
Yeah, so for example, we're quite fortunate. We've got a trainer called Luann Wise, who's based in Cheltenham. So we've worked with her in terms of helping us, in terms of our building control service, for example. But we've also looked further afield, so we do encourage our staff to network use through social media. So we've been very fortunate to work with people like Helen Reynolds, an excellent trainer as well, who I highly recommend. So it's just making sure that people are outward looking, using the platform to look at those ideas of best practice, and then try and bring them back into the organisation.
And so the same really, Chloe, critical friends, has there been a particular partner that you've found helped you achieve the success you've had?
I think we might have lost Chloe.
We might have lost Chloe. In which case, Mark, Seba, have there been big players who have helped you doing what you're doing, or have you been doing it on your own?
Certainly not doing it on our own. I think we've had quite a lot of partners along the way.
I would say critical friends would be our resident. We take our resident, to the highest level because they make the place, they make Barking and Dagenham. So obviously not every resident, give us like the best feedbacks ever. Some people would really angry and frustrated, and it's about listening and taking on board what they want to see. Again, I'm going to use the film studio because this is, today's big news for us. But having the film studio not only give hope, aspiration, 12,000 jobs, a lot of success for our young people and also other, groups of people, all ages, for them to see what, we are about, to celebrate what East London is about, to celebrate the history of Barking and Dagenham, and to make this place, more prosperous and more, vibrant place. And if it wasn't because of the comments or the criticism that, or the feedback our residents were giving us, I don't think that, it would have driven us as a leadership. For us, so especially me as a member, I'm very well aware that not only the council needs to run, to an excellent level, but also our resident needs to feel that they are listened, that they are valued, and that definitely are at the core of anything that we do.
And I suppose practical on things on sector partners. I mean, I think our journey started, and I think if you've seen the presentation, things like the LGA peer review was the start of that kind of being open to people coming and reflecting on what we do and how we do it. And I think if we didn't have that openness, we could never have done what we've done. So along the way, we've had quite a lot of, and actually the bits where we've won awards and like we're doing and celebrating and sharing, actually in the good old days where people came to visit us, you'd often learn a lot more the other direction, I suspect, than they took away.
Yeah. And actually, I'm conscious of the fact that you've actually, in leading certainly into the Everyone Every Day and some of the community actions that you've taken, there was a huge number of years of research even before you started kicking off things. And of course your annual reports since. That's quite a commitment, which it may be interesting for you to say something about that, because I think others could benefit from those results.
I mean, yes, so I'm certainly happy to disseminate and share the information about Everyone Every Day, and the third year report is being prepared, I think, at the moment. Obviously, a slightly odd year, but it's. I think what's interesting though is there's something about how you do a big demonstration project like that with an external partner coming in and all of that, whilst retaining the kind of what is Barking and Dagenham in I think we're sort of in discussions and grappling with some of that at the moment about it's undoubtedly a great project that we've got here, but sort of what's our kind of heart and core around participation that is Barking and Dagenham's story.
Thank you. So I'd just like to wrap up by thanking Mark, Saima, Chloe and Darren for sharing their experiences with us. Congratulations for you in terms of your wins in terms of Certificates of Excellence and the Council of the Year. I'm expecting another submission on the film studio now for the next awards. Just to say that the Certificates of Excellence are open all year round. So this is a chance for the sector to share that best practice, to learn from each other. Without further ado, just to say that we'll be rejoining you at 1400, hopefully to see you then on continuing the digital trend. Thanks you.